And I wanted people to so badly understand that. And I had to realize in that 2-year period, there were people that were never going to understand that. And that was so hard for me. And you just said it. It was because I wanted people to be like, don't you, like, she's healing and she has to go through this. Like, just understand me in this phase. But what was so hurtful was it was a threat to my long-term identity. It was a threat to who I thought I was for so long. I'm so excited today to have an opportunity to do a little takeover on the Surviving Your Brain podcast. My name is Jessica Hurley. I'm the host of Rich in Real Life podcast. And I got some questions for you today, Dr. Philippe Douyon. I'm really excited to talk about the brain during and after trauma. So thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for having me. You're doing the takeover. And we always have awesome
best conversations
right? About real life things and what is going on in the brain.
Yeah.
So this should be good.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people experience trauma.
All the time.
I mean, I feel like most of us are traumatized in this world.
Correct.
Right? I feel like just even walking down the street, passing somebody who's homeless is traumatizing.
Correct.
And
I have so many questions. You just said it, and that's where I wanted to start.
Yeah.
I saw this post recently that was like, you don't have to be a victim or be wildly traumatized or have had this hard life to want to heal. But I'm always perplexed by that because I'm like, some of the most like people that inspire me when it comes to like their level of healing or the work that they have done, or you can just tell that they're so spiritually sound. They've learned emotional regulation. They understand themselves intimately and deeply. Like, tell me if I'm wrong, but for some reason, I have not been able to meet someone at that level that inspires me that has not been through some level of significant trauma that has kind of propelled them into that healing. So do you think it's necessary that we're met with that? Because I feel like I'm so hard-headed that I had to be.
Yeah. Well, I think that they do say in order to have a testimony, you need a test.
Correct.
And so a lot of people who have experienced trauma do the work, and they're constantly doing the work. It's not like they do the work for a year or 2 years and then all of a sudden they're healed.
Right.
They know that they have to constantly be evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's so inspirational about that. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes you will be able to meet people that maybe haven't experienced, some traumatic things on their own, but have seen it around them. And so from that, they can sort of inspire you also because they've done some work to understand what's going on. But it's so much more powerful when somebody has gone through their own test, now has a testimony, and then lets you know what their healing journey has been like, and lets you know that it's a never-ending process.
Can we backtrack for a second? I want to define this for your audience. What is trauma? Because I think there's like these internal falsified levels to it, where it's what we allow people to victimize themselves. And, like the variation in someone's mind could be anything from just losing a parent to a physical mental abuse, to a one act or circumstance, to a lifetime, 5-10 years of circumstance. Like the trauma varies. We use this word so fragrantly, we throw it around, but like in someone's brain, what does it have to look like to be considered trauma? It could be little.
It could be little, right? And it's really easy for people to understand physical trauma. Like you break an arm, everybody's got that.
Correct.
Right? But it's the mental and emotional trauma. And it's a little bit subjective for people.
Right.
So something that may be traumatic for you may not be traumatic for me. Part of it is based on our experience growing up, maybe our family dynamics, maybe even to some extent genetics. Mm-hmm. But it literally could be anything, depending on that individual. And that's why you can't discount it when somebody says that they're sort of traumatized, because it's going to be subjective. And so you've got to take it at face value. You've got to take it seriously. And you really have to help them start to do the work. But from a brain perspective, trauma is anything that is going to trigger your fight, flight, or freeze response as a result of you feeling like you're being threatened in some way. Doesn't need to It doesn't need you to be physically threatened.
It's like a fake threat.
Yeah.
It's not actually happening.
It may not actually be happening, but it can also be a threat to the idea of who you think you are, right? So it doesn't need to be like, oh, my body is being threatened, right? But just my ego, my sense of who I'm supposed to be in this world, right? If that's threatened, that's traumatic for people.
All right, we're gonna deep dive off the end here on this one. When you talk about threatening who you think you are, I've conveyed this to you before that I went through I would say like 2 years of the most significant work I had to do because of something that happened to me that was unexpected. And in that process, I feel like I had to lose myself to find myself. And when I say lose myself, like people don't talk about this part, but yeah, on the other side, I can say it was so necessary, but it was such a threat to my ego. Like I was having tantrums and I was acting out and I was having outbursts and I was angry all the time. There was a moment in the first year where I remember sitting across from my best friend and I was like, I hate this version of me. Like I hate it. It's embarrassing. It's obnoxious. I'm angry. I'm aggressive. I'm short-tempered. I can't show up for people. I'm literally taking from people and I can't give back. And then I realized I was sitting in so much. This was the process that I had to go through. It was slow. It was not overnight. It was not seconds. It was not do the 2 rounds of therapy and you're done. It was years of therapy and it was breaking versions of me that I didn't understand. I had to get down to the core of some of these triggers and what my brain had shut down, and put a pin in that because I want to get to that. But I had to really like sit in the fact that I felt like I was allowing the world to watch me undefine 30 plus years of people pleasing and being the right person and being the good girl and doing the right things and the girl who got her master's degree and helped the community and did all these things. And now she's falling apart and she's having tantrums and she's cussing people out and she's angry and she's self-centered and she's selfish and she's not doing all the things that she used to do to help people because she's fallen apart. And I wanted people to so badly understand that. And I had to realize in that 2-year period, there were people that were never going to understand that. And that was so hard for me. And you just said it. It was because I wanted people to be like, don't you, like she's healing and she has to go through this. Like, just understand me in this phase. But what was so hurtful was it was a threat to my long-term identity. It was a threat to who I thought I was for so long.
Well, what's really interesting is that you said, it was like an unraveling of the good person that you had been, the good girl that you had been. Do you know that from a brain perspective, there's no such thing as good or bad? So that's you placing those judgments on whatever actions you took in your life. But from the brain perspective, things are what they are, right? You were throwing tantrums and pushing people away because you were feeling threatened.
Right.
That's what we do when we're under threat, right? We fight.
Right.
We either fight, we either run, or we freeze.
I'm a fighter.
Right?
Yes.
And look, there is nothing wrong fighting when there's a threat. To protect yourself, you have to.
Right.
But this expectation that other people are going to understand that, I think that's part of the problem. Because most people don't understand themselves. And now you're asking them to understand you and to understand your experiences. That's probably not going to happen.
I think this part is so interesting because when we are trying to uncover the triggers, the trauma, the things that beat us up, it's usually because we're required to. So seldomly, like God bless those of you that are listening and you're like, I just think I need to do some work and I need to kind of like check in and see what's been going on back there. God bless you for doing that. But for most of us, mine was triggered by a separation, a long-term separation, and father of my child and it was grieving all the things that I thought were supposed to be. But I just think this expectation that people will support what they don't understand and that people won't judge us. One, that was my own expectation because I can understand when someone's going through a process and they're grieving loss or they're grieving an identity or they're going through something that is obviously created to transform them. I knew I was going through something that was created to transform me. I just couldn't sit in a lot of it because it was very painful. And so there was a lot of reactions to those things. But I think the expectation that people will support what they don't understand because they can't. And the judgment. The judgment was so heavy. Yeah. And I couldn't understand it because I try my best not to be like that when people are going through something. What is going on? Is there something happening when people are, when they are judging others and judging themselves in the brain? Is it a form of like projection, protection, like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all of the above, right? We have been hardwired to believe certain things about ourselves and society. And it is really difficult to undo those sort of neural networks. Mm-hmm. And when people are not happy with themselves, because they're like, okay, I've been hardwired to do this. It's not working for me. I don't understand. It must be me. I must be stupid. I must be this. I must be that. Then of course they're going to turn around and judge you. When you look at the people who are most supportive in life, it is the people that have worked really hard, that are doing some great things, whether it's spiritually, personally, or business-wise. And they want to see you win because they know what it takes. And they're fairly content with their life. People who are not happy with their life, oh man. When I see somebody judging somebody else, I'm like, if that's how you judge them, you must judge yourself 10 times worse. Oof. Right? It's got to be painful for them.
Right.
And then you're asking those same people now to turn around and support you. Like that doesn't even make sense.
Right.
That's not even logical. But that's the expectation that we put on others and oftentimes on ourselves. Right? We expect ourselves to be there for people, even at times when we're not there for ourselves. Mm-hmm. I see doctors all the time who your job is to take care of people.
But you don't take care of yourself.
They don't take care of themselves. They're overweight. They're smoking. They're drinking. They're popping pills. Don't sleep. I'm guilty of this. Sleeping. Right? And then they're supposed to turn around and then do that for somebody else. I remember when I was a medical student, I had a GI attending. So the doctor that took care of your stomach and intestines and all that stuff. She was over 400 pounds. And I remember thinking to myself, what patient is listening to you? Mm. Because how can you take care of somebody else if you don't first and foremost take care of yourself? And it's the same thing at play sort of in the world. How can we expect people to support us when they don't even know how to support themselves? So of course it comes out as judgment. Mm. Right? And instead of looking towards others all the time, a lot of times we just need to look to ourselves. Now, if we're lucky, we may have one or two champions in life that are there for us during the great times mm-hmm. and our ugliest moments.
Boy, I was ugly.
And if you got one or two of those champions, you're winning. You're winning in life. That's all you need. You don't need 10 champions.
Right.
You don't need 10 great friends. Just one or two. And transformation is an ugly process.
I wish people would say
it's an
that
ugly
more.
Process. I mean, think about the butterfly.
Yeah.
Think about the butterfly, right? I mean, it's kind of cute as what is it before it's a butterfly?
Caterpillar?
Caterpillar.
Oh my God. Don't ask me the scientific question.
It's kind of cute as a caterpillar.
Right.
Then it forms this ugly cocoon,
yeah.
right? We have no idea what's going on inside there.
Right.
It might be painful. It might be stressed the hell out. It might be like,
has
oh my
anxiety
God.
about what's coming.
Right.
I don't know where this is going.
It may not. It's the first time, right? That it's going through that process. And then it's vulnerable, just hanging there, right? It doesn't know if it's going to be eaten by a predator. But then, after it transforms, it becomes this beautiful butterfly with wings and can fly. It's the same thing for people. Transformation is ugly for us sometimes. But on the other end, there's beauty.
I want to deep dive into this PTSD and rewiring your neural network. And if I'm saying it wrong, please correct me. When I was going through that process, I realized one of the things, and I don't know that I technically had PTSD, but when I've read about it, I read this line that was so profound. It was that you are experiencing PTSD if you cannot stop reliving the negative memory. And I remember so many people during that time telling me, like, that's all you talk about. That's all you think about. And I was like, it's literally all I think about. I can't stop reliving the negative memories of this. And the stuff, like, one of the toughest things I had to work through was, I think people try to positive their way out of stuff like that. And I appreciate those that can do it. But for me, it was just so, I don't know. It was just so ingrained in me. Like, I woke up with the memories. I went to sleep with the memories. I walked through the memories daily, but I realized I was working so hard to, like, no, push them away, that I had to go through this phase where I had to sit with them and let them in order to grieve them. It was like the grieving process was like, no, let's put them in a box, and you're going to literally sit with them, and you're going to cry through them, and you're going to love them. And then eventually you're going to, like, let them go. Right. And no one told me that part. Like, people were just chastising, or, like, even my therapist, like, it just felt like people were trying to get me to, like, positive my way out of it. And it was like, but I'm literally waking up, going to sleep, and, like, almost married to these memories. It was like my brain wouldn't give me the choice to choose something different. And I realized in order for me to choose something different, I had to release the resistance to allow them in first and, like, love them again. And then I could make the choice. But it was like my brain was stuck in this cycle of it was a movie playing in my head. And people kept saying, you're choosing the movie. And I'm like, I'm not choosing the movie. And to get to the rewiring, which I have, and it's so beautiful. And I can't wait till we talk deeply about what the other side, because my brain and my experiences and everything afterwards works completely different now. Yeah. But that part of just my brain, it was like my brain was playing tricks on me. Like, I was like, get me out of this effing movie.
Yeah.
What was my brain doing? Why?
So let me answer that with an example that's unrealistic in this situation, right? So let's say a lion walks up those stairs over there and walks into this room.
I mean, a spider did.
A spider did. Oh, that's true. A spider. We saw a spider yesterday in this room.
He might as well have walked up the stairs.
Yeah, and everybody has freaked out, and that's all everybody could talk about this morning. Right?
Myself included.
Yeah. So some people will not relate to the spider, though.
Right.
But if a lion walks up those stairs and comes into this room, everybody's going to freak out.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to, because that is a significant threat.
Correct.
Right? Now your brain is going to hyper focus on that lion.
Right.
It needs to focus on the posture of the lion, where the lion is. It needs to focus on
an exit plan.
If you're going to fight, what you can grab to fight, right? You need to decide if you're going to fight or run or freeze. Your brain is going to make that decision for you really quick. Mm-hmm. It's going to release certain chemicals, especially cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It's the stress hormone. And what that hormone is going to do in your brain is that it's going to now activate neurons in the parts of your brain responsible for your memory, in your hippocampus, right? And it wants to just laser focus on that thing. You are not going to be able to make any new memories surrounding anything else that's happening in the moment except for that line.
Correct.
You tell this story 2 weeks later, and assuming you survive, right. You tell this story 2 weeks later about a lion coming into a room, they're going to be like, who are you in the room with? And you might be like, you know what? I don't even know. I think there was some guy named Tom, some guy named David. I'd be like, no, I think both their names are like Chris.
Yeah.
Like we may not even remember. Right? Because our brain doesn't make that memory. Right. It's just hyper-focused on the threat. And it's going to continue to replay that threat for you over and over. Because the brain's primary job is to keep you safe. It is to protect you. And the way that it does that is based on your past experiences. And there are going to be things in your environment that are going to trigger those memories that you're never going to be aware of until you start doing the work, right? So every time I see a microphone, I might be like, holy crap, I'm super anxious. All of a sudden I'm thinking about that lion. Well, there are several microphones in this room.
Right.
Every time I see a fake orchid, I don't know.
Don't try it.
Right? I might get anxious. It might trigger that memory for me. There are going to be triggers everywhere. And until I do the work, I'm not even aware of what those triggers are. And those triggers may last a lifetime. They may pop up from time to time. And it's going to be about figuring out how to work through those triggers.
I want to point something out about what you're saying right now, because this makes so much sense. I couldn't get there, but the cycle that was playing, I want to lay down a story for you guys so this all makes sense. The story that was playing in my mind was that there was a threat from a person that I once loved, right? But I couldn't figure out what the threat was. That's why I had to sit with it for so long. And with the work that you're talking about is that you have to identify the threat. Well, it's very easy for someone listening to think that the threat was the person. Oh, I could have worked through that easily. The threat wasn't the person. The work was where I discovered the threat when I sat with all of it. And to me, when we talked about this earlier, I couldn't discover what the threat was until I was so lost in the cycle that I had to do deep work. Like I was like, why do I live inside of this? Like there's an invitation here that I'm stuck in a cycle, and there's an invitation for me to see something that is bigger or deeper than just this perceived threat of this past relationship that I was in. What the F is going on? And when I did the work, what I discovered, and I'm very honest on my show about this, is I've done everything: EMDR, Reiki, energy healing, all the things. And through EMDR, one of the most profound things I discovered, which was the threat, was that there were traumas in my life way prior to that relationship when I was a child that I knew those traumas. I was aware. For the majority of us, we know a lot of the things that happened in our childhood. But there was a incremental moment in some of those traumas this big that when I did EMDR, I discovered moments that my brain shut out, where I completely created a new lens and told myself a different story from my life and that moment ongoing. And just in EMDR, there was this like teeny tiny moment of a moment that happened between my father and I, and the trauma I've known for 20 years. But there was a moment where he walked past me and I realized I decided I didn't matter anymore. And the threat and the cycle of my mind leaving this relationship was, I need to figure out why I don't matter. I need to figure out why, after everything I did, why don't I matter? And I'm blaming this threat on this person, but it's not this person. It is the unhealed story I told myself from the age of 5 that I don't matter. And now here I am 30 years later, validating through someone that I don't matter. And so the tantrums were my 5-year-old self throwing myself on the ground. I actually was in this spiritual experience, this hypnosis experience. And I replayed a fight I had with my previous partner after the separation. And she's like, I want you to go back as your highest self and figure out what's going on. And I was in the meditation and I see it happening, and I go back as my highest self and I go to tap her to tell her to turn around. And in my mind, I'm like, maybe I'm going to give her a hug or something. Man, in the meditation, that girl literally pushes me out of the way. This wall drops down. I kick the wall. I'm flicking birds. I'm punching the wall. And I see my previous partner on the other side, like, what are you doing? And so I stop the meditation. I throw the headphones off and I tell the therapist, I'm like, I'm freaking out. I'm literally freaking out. And she just smiles. And she's like, what is she doing? I said, she's punching the wall. She's kicking I said, I didn't do this that night. And she's like, let her.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? I'm recreating a memory that doesn't exist. She goes, no, you are discovering something that you didn't know. And my 5-year-old self was having a tantrum that night because I wanted someone to prove to me that I matter.
Yep.
When really what I needed to do was heal that threat. That's not true.
Yeah.
Like what? And for me to find out 32 years later that it was a millisecond at age 5 that I decided,
moment in time.
My brain shut that shit out.
Yeah, of course.
I had to go through a spiritual meditative experience to discover that my brain had shut that out. Why did the brain shut that out? And why did that take me so long to discover? And then 3, why is that so important for people to go? Because I always hear people, don't go back to your past. Don't do that. You're going to drag yourself down a dark hole. But had I never done that, I would not be here. So why is that why does our brain do that? And why is it so important to go back?
Hey guys, thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to know the next steps that you can take, then you definitely want to check out my online course, Take Charge of Your Brain. When I think about this course and think about some of the testimonials, I think about the guy who was finally able to put out his very first music album. I think about the people that have been able to overcome health challenges as a result of being in this course, or people who are able to start their own businesses as a result of being in this course. I even think about somebody who was finally able to get pregnant, have the family of her dreams because of what she learned in this course. This course is going to be transformative for you. Here's a secret tip I have for you. Success in health, in business, and in life starts in your brain. So take charge of your brain today. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Now back to this episode.
So first of all, your brain's primary job is to protect you. And
Right.
it will protect you at all costs. Even if that means that it will shut out memories from your past, which we often see when people have undergone trauma.
Right.
One thing I tell people all the time, and the way that we're talking, right? It's like, why did my brain do that? Why did your brain did this, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same way I would say to you, oh, your arm is this. Or you would say, my leg is this. You are not your brain. The same way that you are not your trauma. And so when your therapist said to you, let your highest self sort of evaluate this situation.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to think, oh, your highest self means you're who you are now in terms of your age. But your highest self is that you're a higher level of consciousness than this body you inhabit and this brain that you have in your skull.
Right.
And it's so important for you to take charge of all of it, right? Because we're not our brains. We're not our traumas. We're not our experiences.
You ever read the book, The Game of Life and How to Play It?
No.
It's so good. It just does a lot of tying in manifestation in the Bible, but they always reference that as your God self.
Yeah.
It's your version of you that is not filtered by problems, trauma, things. It is your God self. And so when I walked into that room that night, I was my God self. I was the version of me that is light, unbothered, exactly where I want to be, happy, joyful, peaceful. And I could not figure out why she was so traumatized.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because separation is traumatic for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
That was really traumatic for me.
Mm-hmm.
And in the work that I did, what I realized was, and here's why it was traumatic. It wasn't a threat to me physically.
Mm-mm.
It was a threat to the idea of who I was.
Mm.
And it was literally like, damn, am I not a good enough provider?
Right.
Am I not a good enough lover? Am I not a good enough father?
Right.
Am I not good enough? Am I not good enough? Am I not good enough? Well, where did that come from? That came from childhood for me.
Mm.
Oh, I'm not good enough. Being told, I
That's
wish
not
you were
good
like
enough.
this person. You play tennis like this person. You're not as good as this person, and constantly hearing that as a child. And then worse than hearing that, we're playing it over and over. And then how it manifested times in my career, which it does for all of us. Am I good enough to hold this position?
Mm.
Who allowed me to be a doctor and take care of all these people when I first got my degree? Am I good enough? Right. And a lot of medical students have this. Oh my God, we're now set out on the world to be doctors. Right.
And I bet separation does that to you as a doctor too. If I can't take care of my wife and my family, how am I going to take care of all these people?
How am I going to take care of all these people? But then you turn to work, or at least I did, because there was safety in that. Because
Distraction.
I got praise in the hospital. There was safety in that. Oh, well, at least I know I'm a good enough doctor.
Right.
Right. And it wasn't until doing the work and figuring out, no, I am good enough. Yes, there are things that I would do different. So I revisit that to see how I can be a much better version of myself. But it's not about blaming myself. You learn and sort of move on. It's not even about blaming my ex-wife, right? Mm-hmm. She's a great person. I'm lucky to have children with her. She's a great mom. Mm-hmm. The relationship didn't work out. It is what it is. But you revisit the past to learn from it. So that way you can evolve and make your life better.
You absolutely have to.
Yeah, you have to. It's not that you revisit the past to stay there.
No.
It's just you take the lesson and you move on.
I've learned so many things from revisiting my past but to me, it's not even your past. It is currently operating in my present.
Yeah.
It is the lens in which I live my life through and make decisions by. It is a wedge in my side that I am not uncovering. Like, who is that making those decisions? The 5-year-old that didn't heal this, the 10-year-old that thought this, that thought, whatever. Like, it is the wedge in my side. That's why it's so important. We think it's our past. Like, don't live in no, it is literally wreaking havoc in your current life.
Yeah.
Most of the times. I think that is usually the lens that most people live their life through.
Oh, absolutely. And this is why you not only need to survive your brain, but then you need to take charge of your brain, right? Because the brain is going to base your today and your tomorrow on your past experiences. Right? Your brains today are based on yesterday.
Yep.
The neurons you have in your brain floating around today, those are neurons you made yesterday and 5 years ago and 10 years ago. You want a different experience? You need to create some new neurons. You want a different future? You need to really sort of take charge of your brain and create new experiences for yourself.
Creating new neurons. Break that down, because that was the hardest second half of this experience for me.
Yeah.
It was sitting with it and discovering. And then to me, there's implementation.
Yeah.
And implementation looks like now you have to go recreate your identity, your memories, who you are, how you feel, how you react. And this to me is really new neurons, but explain new neurons.
Yeah. So we've got the ability to make new neurons, new nerve cells within our brain our entire life. We used to think that, maybe we had this ability in childhood, but then we'd lose it as an adult. But that's not the case at all. We can make new neurons. And I'll give you an example. You can learn a new skill today. Right? If you wanted to learn to play guitar, you could learn to play the guitar.
Yeah.
That's because you're making new neurons.
I feel like you read that out of me.
Yeah. That's because you're making new neurons. You're making new connections. Any new skill you develop is because you're creating new nerve cells and new pathways within your brain. One of the things I tell my kids all the time, there is no point in arguing with people.
None
at all.
What are you doing?
Right. And they're like, why? I'm like, because people are basing their arguments on what they know, on the neurons and networks they have in their brain.
Correct.
And all they're going to do when you argue with them is they're going to double down. Their brains so desperately want to prove them right, they're going to find anything in their environment to do so.
Right.
If you really want to change somebody's perspective, give them new experiences, because then they make new neurons and new connections.
One of the most profound observations for me in that process, because I am the person, let me be crystal clear, that I am not the smartest person in this room. I am the person that I have to live everything to then be able to explain it. People will, they're like, when they're like, you're smart if you can learn from your own mistakes, you're wise if you can learn from someone else's. Yep. I am not that person. I have to go live it. I'm so hard-headed. And I remember at the beginning of my healing journey, I heard Glennon Doyle say this quote. She was like, people always say, forgive and forget, forgive and forget, forgive and forget. She was like, forgive is easy. It's a decision. And now forgiveness is for you. It is. She's like, but you can't, the package is forgive and forget.
Yeah.
And she said, people struggle so bad with forgetting because it means that you're making the decision that all these memories with this person no longer matter.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I'll ever get there. Like, I was like, that sounds just awful and that's impossible and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, how am I going to consciously choose to forget? But then as I consciously chose to create the new neurons and new experiences, recreate my new life, like it started with a new network. It started with a new environment. Then it was, deeper, more conscious friendships. It was deeper conscious spiritual work. It was better books. It was more travel. Like it was putting myself in spaces that allowed me to create and be creative. And then I looked up one day and I forgot. And then I was like, I didn't necessarily have to consciously choose to forget. I just had to create the new neurons like the new experiences, the new everything. Because I looked up not too long ago, I was like, holy shit, my whole life is different. Everything is different. It is like I've created a new identity, and not in like the falsified fake version, but just like everything in my life is different, including my reactions.
Yeah.
And then just by design, it was no longer a part of my pathways at all. It's not in my space or my psyche or my story anymore. It's no longer part of my story.
Yeah.
But that had to come, the thing that I thought I couldn't do, with recreating everything. And that was like a slow, conscious decision over and over and over again.
Yeah. And you know what happens? No longer resentful.
Yes.
No longer angry. From time to time, you may throw tantrums, but you understand them. You forgive yourself and you move on quickly. And you create a life that you want for yourself. And that's really what the brain is about. The brain's ability to evolve means that we're capable of evolving, and that we need to be evolving our entire lives. So we take the experiences that we've had, those that haven't worked for us. We learn those experiences. We apply those lessons to whatever is happening in the present or going to happen in the future. We move on and we create the life that we want for ourselves.
Let me end with this question for you. For someone listening that might be recovering from anything, trauma, separation, loss, grief, divorce, I can't imagine. I just think about all the things that people in the world are going through right now. Unforeseen circumstances with their finances. Like, these things are traumatic. There is deep anxiety. I know a lot of people ridden with anxiety right now.
Yeah.
I felt during that time, one of the biggest parts of work that nobody would talk about was, I just don't know if the brain has the space to create grace for all the shame and guilt that you'll experience. Like, there was just so much shame and guilt about me not being okay for a long period of time. If someone is in that space right now, what would your 2 or 3 pieces of advice be to just be graceful with themselves and their brain in this process?
Yeah.
Because I had to lose it first to get it back. And I don't mean like lose it, tape me to a wall type stuff, but I was beside myself several times.
So I think that's a great question. And my answer is, of course, the brain has space to be graceful. But the brain is going to look to you. You have to decide that you've got the space to be graceful. Remember, you're not the brain. Right? We were talking before.
So I have to lead the brain.
You got to lead the brain. We were talking before, and I was using a puppy analogy, puppy metaphor. If you guys ever see a dog out in the street that is just out of control, barking at other dogs, barking at people, pulling the leash. So the owner is like, there's a lot of tension on the leash. That's not a dog problem. That is a person problem. Right? For you guys who know who Cesar Millan is, the dog whisperer, everybody thinks he's always training dogs. No, he's training people. Right? That's a lot of the work that I do when it comes to the brain. I'm not healing the brain necessarily. I'm training people to be the leaders their brains need them to be. And he's doing the same thing with dogs. A dog does not want to be the leader of its pack, its human pack. It does not. Right? It does not want to have to fight the battles. It doesn't want to have to bark at the other dogs and bark at people. It doesn't want all this tension on the leash and leading its owner. But if the dog recognizes that its owner is not a strong leader, then the dog feels like it needs to step up and do those things. You ever see like a dog on the street constantly looking at its owner like, okay, what do you want me to do now? What do you want me to do now? What are you doing? What are you doing? That is the brain looking to you for guidance. Your brain is like, okay, Jessica, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? What do you want me to do? Oh, you're not doing anything? Oh, shoot, then I got to take control. And when the brain does that, it will take you down a very dark hole very, very quickly. So an example of that, you're having a good day, great day. Somebody comes and says one negative thing. It's one 10-second moment in a 24-hour period.
Yes, he's talking to you.
One 10-second moment in a 24-hour period shifts your mood. All of a sudden, you're angry at that person. They suck.
You're angry at everyone else.
You start thinking about your life and how your life sucks. You're angry at everybody. Everybody sucks. You're angry at the world. You're like, oh my God, there's a war going on here. This government sucks here. This is happening here. That is your brain taking you down this dark, dark rabbit hole if you let it. And instead, you want to tell your brain what to do. You want to be the leader, because that's when things are calm. That's when your life starts moving into a place that you want it to move to. And so many people that I see are being led by their brains. And society does not help. Right? Society profits off of that. So they play on that. But the goal is to teach people how to become the leaders that their brains need them to be. So that way they can create the lives that they want for themselves.
And so list what some of these things look like, because I hear what you're saying. And I'm like, okay, so there's so many moments that our brain is out of control. Yeah, absolutely. The tools I had to learn. What are some of your favorite tools that allow you to take control? Because I mean, this comes in the form of like immense anxiety and insurmountable anxiety. It's almost wild when you're self-aware of your body, because I will literally be in bed at night and be like, what are you doing? Like, none of these things are true. Like, you're literally walking yourself down a rabbit hole that your life is going to fall apart, and you're fine. Everything's fine. But your brain's trying to prepare you for something that isn't even happening. Yeah. And then I have to immediately start going to the tools, which I love now, because I'm like, it's so powerful. And I'm not saying this, but in those moments, I don't need a doctor. I don't need a medication. I've even learned in the last season that I don't necessarily need a friend. And I'm not saying that to say isolation is okay, but I used to go to the friend for everything, validate this make sense, help me make a decision, versus now I'm like, the tools are internal. Yeah. I can immediately go to writing. I can immediately go to positive self-talk. I can immediately go to meditation and get myself out of these things. So what are those tools for you?
Well, I think you just made a great point, right? We live in a world where we're supposed to seek external validation or external help. And the reality is that a lot of it is about us. And we need to turn inward for the answers and not always outward. And for those of you who may not believe that you're being led by your brains, let me just give you some examples that you are. If you've got anxiety, you're being led by your brain. If you're fearful, you're being led by your brain. If you've got limiting beliefs, you're being led by your brain. If you are in a moment of quiet and all of a sudden your brain conjures up some scenario that does not even exist, you are being led by your brain. Right? And the tools that I use to combat some of this, one is I exercise. I get my body moving. Mm-hmm. I get my body moving, because exercise is not just great for your body, it's also great for your brain. It is the biggest promoter of neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to make new neurons and make new connections. Other things that I do, I'm very, very mindful of what I feed my brain. Mm-hmm. So I don't feed my brain anything negative. I don't listen to the news anymore. If somebody is in my life, but they don't really work for me all that well because they're too negative, do I either get rid of you, or if I love you and your family, I keep you at a distance. Which is essentially I kind of get rid of you. Right?
He didn't mean it.
A lot of positive self-talk. A lot of positive self-talk.
You got to fight back.
Yeah, you do have to fight back. Looking for the good in a lot of situations, right? Instead of being focused on the negative. I'm also very mindful of who I surround myself with, like I mentioned, but for the purpose that I know that our brains start to operate at the same frequency as the people we spend the most time with. And so I don't want to start thinking and acting like people who are incredibly negative and fearful and have all these limiting beliefs. Right? I want people who are positive, who are doing great things, who believe in themselves, who are taking good care of themselves, because they're going to then be a champion for me. They're going to encourage me to take care of myself. They're going to believe in me. Right? So those are some of the things that I do for me.
This was so good. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the space to say that. Thank you for breaking this down, because I think the understanding of, I think the connection to our feelings in the brain are so important. But the most powerful part of all of this is taking charge of your brain, is the distinction that it is not who we are. And we do have to fight back. We do have to tell our brain what to do. And we do have to tell our brain where to go. And we do have to lead our brain, and how this probably bleeds into everything. Money matters, relationships, connections, where we are in life probably has everything to do with our lack of control of our brain.
Yeah.
And so if you guys didn't see, like, if you saw this powerful, make sure you write a review, follow him, check out your program, which is Taking Charge of Your Brain.
Take charge of your brain. Yeah.
This has been the most powerful thing I've ever done for myself, was inserting just those simple internal tools and knowing and being aware enough of when I'm in those moments.
Yeah. Well, first, look, you've got to survive your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to take charge of your brain. And that's when you start to thrive in life.
Yep. Well, thank you. This was dope.
Yeah. Thank you for taking over my podcast. Do I get it back now?
You can have it back. You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.